Good afternoon, everyone. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity today to speak with DC's brand new Chancellor, Antwan Wilson. He's recently arrived from Oakland, where he was the superintendent of their public school district there. And you've been on the job for 3 months now, has it been?
I'm in week 10.
Week 10. Oh, we're counting by the weeks now.
Absolutely. I'm going to do that as long as I can.
So I hear it's not the easiest of jobs to be at the helm of DCPS. Have you liked it so far? How's it been?
Well, what I always say is I'm having fun if no one else is. It's been tremendous. I can't say enough as to how great it's been.
What has been the most surprising thing about this job?
Well, I think it's a positive thing in terms of the surprise. It's just the degree to which people are saying the same thing in different parts of town and not necessarily understanding that they are saying the same things in different parts of town. So specifically, I hear a lot about the importance of focusing on the achievement gap and ensuring that students furthest away from opportunity are getting opportunities that are afforded to students with the most amount of privilege. And I think what has been surprising to me is when I hear someone in a particular part of town say, you're going to hear this from me, but you probably won't hear this spoken about in this way, and then I go to another part of town and hear the exact same thing. What is surprising about that is just the degree to which people recognize that equity matters, and it has to be a focus of the school district.
Speaking of the achievement gap, I know that's probably your top priority as a chancellor, and it's been maybe one of the most stubborn challenges here in DCPS. We're winding down from the latest 5-year strategic plan, and we actually achieved a lot of the goals we had laid out, including increasing enrollment, improving student satisfaction, overall achievement, but the achievement gap is still quite persistent. What are your plans to address that?
Well, I think the first thing that is important to do is to acknowledge the tremendous progress that has been made here in D.C. Oftentimes I hear that, and it's spoken about really quickly, and I think that is something that needs to be unpacked and uncovered, and then also celebrated. That there has been tremendous progress. You think about in 2011, that it was literally like flipping a coin as to whether or not a student would graduate from high school. And you think about at the end of this year that we'll be at 3 out of every 4 ninth graders who enter high school will be graduating. I mean, that is an amazing amount of progress in a very short period of time. You think about the enrollment after years of decline. You think about several years of significant growth in enrollment. And you think about being the fastest growing urban school district as measured by the National Assessment for Educational Progress. And I think that's amazing considering how much I know of other school districts that are also taking that assessment and the great work they're doing. So I think it's important to start there. And in answer to your question in terms of the achievement gap, it's something that has persisted in a lot of districts. And one of the reasons why districts struggle is because those other things aren't happening. And so because the district has had the significant progress, I think it really creates an opportune time for me to come in and say, okay, what would it look like if we were to make our work about accelerating progress for all and significantly accelerating progress for those students who are furthest behind and making that our business. And I think we do that by focusing on it and saying that's our number one priority.
I don't think we can talk about the achievement gap without talking about segregation and racially and socioeconomically, and that's another persistent challenge here in the district. A UCLA Civil Rights Project report recently reported that schools are even more segregated than neighborhoods in DC. Obviously, that's intertwined with the achievement gap. How does that inform your thinking on closing that gap?
Well, I think a few things. One is we have to talk about the intersection of race and education, and I think that we have to talk about certainly the role that it plays, even separate from economics and income level. Oftentimes, income level, it's easier to talk about the impact of income level. in education. I think we have to be willing to talk about that and look at some of the dynamics. I think we have to create spaces to challenge assumptions that are made across racial groups about particular abilities of various students, specifically African American students, Latino and Latina students, as well as certain population of Asian Pacific Islanders as well. I mean, I think we have to be willing to have those really rigorous conversations. Then from there, I think that positions us to really challenge some of our traditional notions as to how schools should work, how students should be organized in schools, what it means to be an effective teacher, a successful teacher at the highest levels, principal at the highest level, and where you then do your work. And trying to create opportunities where people see that it's actually a plus to be in such a diverse area, but we don't get our the full impact of that diversity unless we're creating opportunities for young people, for teachers, for school leaders to actually regularly be interacting with each other, learning from each other, and pushing each other.
When you speak about creating those opportunities, what are you talking about? What's an example of
Well, I think
that?
one, you have to be in class together. I mean, I think that's important. You got to be in class together. You have to be pursuing inquiry-based projects together. If you're teachers, you have to be collaborating and planning lessons together, unpacking those lessons, talking about student progress, exploring what future opportunities you might want to provide students, talking about what's working, what's not working, and challenging each other. And then if you're a school leader, I think you have to be learning from effective practice, looking at examples of excellence regardless of where they live, regardless of what parts of town. And I think we need to be able to talk about examples of success in schools, regardless of where students are. I'll give you an example. I visited Jefferson Middle School twice. And Jefferson Middle School is a school here in the district that predominantly kids of color, and it's a school where teachers are working collaboratively, trying to figure out how to provide students excellent opportunities to excel. And those teachers would benefit if there were other schools that maybe had a different demographic that were really working to collaborate with them and learn from what they're doing, and while also the teachers at Jefferson had an opportunity to learn from what those other schools are doing. And part of my job is to try to figure out how do we create that.
DC's plan under the Every Student Succeeds Act comes up with a rating system in which each DCPS school will be rated on a scale, I think, of 0 to 5, and a huge emphasis is placed on standardized testing. How do you respond to critics who fear that this is just another example of a policy that encourages teaching to the test?
Yeah, it's a complicated answer, so I don't know how much time I have, but I'll do my best to hit a few points. First and foremost, going back to the conversation around the achievement gap and answering this question, for me, the achievement gap is a manifestation of two things. The first is opportunity. This is an opportunity gap. How do we make sure that we provide access to across racial groups, across SES groups, to rigorous opportunities, to effective teachers, quality schools, rigorous academic programs, and great support? Great support, because you show me a school where students are performing well, and I'll show you a group of students who get supported very well. They tend to have tutors and have people who are coming in, providing them additional opportunities for support, and regularly surrounding them with the idea that they can do it. So, opportunity gap. But the other is a belief gap. And that's the space that most folks don't want to spend time on. And belief gap is something that persists with people who care greatly about the young people who are showing the achievement gap. They care greatly about them. They work with them. They parent them. They teach them, so on and so forth. But then what we'll hear them say is, well, I don't know. It's unfair. I don't know if they can reach that academic bar that we set for every other student their age. So what I say in regards to the assessment is this, that I don't fear our ability to help students demonstrate tremendous growth and reach a bar if we're willing to now orient ourselves around the work that it's going to need to provide those students the robust amounts of support they're going to need, and not just focus on the academic pieces, but the social emotional pieces that need to be available that are conducive to helping anyone perform academically, and that if we're able to organize ourselves in the city to connect agencies in support of students and families who aspire to receive that education. And that is not to say that I believe that we got it completely right on the accountability system, because I do believe that there are pieces of that should also be measured above and beyond the academics, which speaks to culture, climate in a school. I mean, I'm a parent now. I'm looking for schools for my children, and I guarantee you I won't spend 1 minute looking at the test scores. I'll spend all of my time looking at culture, climate, who's leading the school, in the orientation of the adults working with the students about what they believe the students can do. And if that's right, that's where I'll send my children. And that's the way I look at it. And as a chancellor, I want to put myself in a position where we are helping our schools put students in a position where they grow and show the tremendous growth regardless of where they start. If we do that and students are growing exponentially, then they'll hit whatever bar OSSI has set as it relates to the accountability system.
And last question before I open it up to the audience. Speaking of school climate and culture, I think another element that we have to think about is just we're in a new political era. Tensions are high on school campuses. We have a majority minority student population in DCPS. How are you navigating issues around climate and student morale with regards to the political era?
Well, I appreciate the question. Regardless of the political era, I think about why I do the work that I do and what I think young people need. Young people need to be surrounded by people who believe in them, who have high expectations for them, who are thinking about what they need now and in the future, and who love them. And that means that they see them as whole individuals, and the things that are important to them in the moment are important to the adults who are working with them. And so what we're doing is we're trying to create the space for our educators to say, look, we need to support our students, their families, so that they can cope with some of the craziness that has infected our country as it relates to how we treat people. And this hit home for me in my visit to Bruce Monroe Elementary School, talking with the principal there. And what was present on her mind that day was some of her students and families who had been detained and trying to provide them support. And so our work was to say, look, whatever we can do from a system perspective to be helpful for you and your families, that's what we'll do. And that issue that you're working through is the most important support you can provide, most important issue you can be focused on right now, because if you don't show the empathy and support for that, those issues, then we won't effectively educate students, and the parents shouldn't trust us in the first place. And so that's the work that we want to do as a system, is to make sure that we are leading. If we have to be the ones that provide the leadership to say that every student matters, every family matters, we educate everyone. We're happy to do so in DCPS, educate every child, and we care about the issues that they care about.
Do you think that will be a huge influence as you start to develop your strategic plan for the next 5 years, those values?
They absolutely will, and values in general will have a huge role in what we roll out. And leadership matters, and how we situate ourselves to align with essential American values, equality and liberty and justice for all matters. And we in DCPS feel very comfortable leading in that way.
Great. Anyone have any questions in the audience?
Hi, Leela Blackney. I'm with Access Youth. I was wondering what your plan is to address truancy within DCPS. I think it's pretty obvious to say that students don't have the opportunity to succeed or achieve if they are not in school?
Yeah, I think a few things really quickly. I mean, I think it's trying to connect with families, particularly of young children, because a lot of the truancy that happens begins when students are really young, to make sure that their needs are being met and they feel vested in the city and their child's success, but also that they feel the city is vested in their success. They have a place to eat, live, they have something to eat, they have a job to go to, and they have people who love and support them and their children at school. I think at the secondary level, it is about making sure that students feel relevance in school, connecting with post-secondary, and then also wrapping the social emotional supports around them as well. And then that requires partnership with private agencies, public agencies, in recognition that we as a school district can't do it alone. Our teachers are there primarily to teach and love students, but they need help in terms of helping get students there.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Wolf. I'm with Center for Inspired Teaching. I want to thank you first for giving a shout out to Jefferson, which is my neighborhood school, and I know DeVos went there when she first started and had a different perspective, so I appreciate that positive review of the school. I'm curious, when you talk about collaboration with schools like Jefferson and if other teachers had an opportunity to work with each other, if there are any plans or how professional development might play into that in the future while you're here with DC.
Yeah, just really quickly to digress really quickly. Secretary DeVos couldn't have been more complimentary in the room with the teachers. And so, I just believe that you should be the same person behind closed doors as you are publicly. And I know that she said positive things to them, and the teachers certainly refuted the idea that they were anyway slaves to some larger bureaucracy. As it relates to the collaboration piece, what I would say is that yes, I'm already having conversations around how we can incent the types of bottom-up collaboration that I think educators naturally thrive in and want. And I think that we have talented people who are able to come up with ideas such as Cornerstone and Leap and so many amazing ideas that allowing them to unleash that creativity to solve this problem, they'll come up with additional amazing ideas.
Well, last question for me. I'm sorry, I gotta steal you. In one or two sentences, what is one lesson you gleaned from Oakland that you think can be applied here?
Well, I mean, there's so many that can be gleaned, and Oakland's a tremendous place, and they're doing a lot of things. I think that the how is as important as the what. And Oakland is a place that really is focused on the social emotional piece and the community aspect of the work. And I think that that's the how. And for me, I think context matters. And so a lot of my work in terms of my personal lesson is trying to learn as much about the context so I can be as smart as possible in terms of identifying solutions to move forward. And I think that that's an area that I want to be better than I was in the past. And I work real hard to be smarter today than I was yesterday. And I intend to learn that lesson.
Well, thank you, Chancellor. Look forward to seeing how DCPS evolves under your leadership.